Hello and welcome to this video where we will explain why you're better off searching for a research problem rather than a research gap. Let's begin with a quote from a typical student. I need to find a research gap in the existing literature and fill it with new insights from my thesis. You might be among the many students who have been told to dive deep into the library at the start of your bachelor's or master thesis to find a research gap, so a subject area that hasn't been explored much or at all. Our experience, however, shows that this approach often leads to a dead end. We have seen countless students struggle for weeks and months because they just couldn't find a research gap. And you might have been there too, for example, during semester projects. You sit for hours in the library, surf the web, or read through Google Scholar's endless forest of scientific publications, all with the aim of finding a research gap. And at some point, you rightfully wonder, how am I supposed to find a knowledge gap that no one else has discovered yet? Everything has been said at least 1,000 times already. And as if that were not enough, this frustration is often intensified by the fear of having to make absolutely sure that no one else has touched upon the subject you want to write about, or else it could be considered plagiarism. But let's be clear, it's impossible for you or anyone else to read every publication just to make sure your topic hasn't been covered already. And frankly, you don't have to. Life is definitely too short to read every publication out there. So the question for you is there a more effective way to find a good topic than by searching for a research gap in the existing literature? Instead of looking for a research gap, as visualized on the left side on this slide, so an unexplored blind spot in the literature, we recommend that you focus on finding a research problem, as visualized on the right side of this slide. A research problem, note, is just an issue that is currently getting a lot of attention in the literature and for which there are either only few good answers, incomplete or contradictory answers. You might find this advice new and wonder why it makes sense or makes more sense to focus on a research problem rather than a research gap. The short answer is that a research problem is always also a research gap, but a research gap is seldom a research problem. Let's illustrate this with an example from St. Gallen. You probably agree with me that no study has ever analyzed how many birds land on the roof of the main building of the University of St. Gallen each day. So you would also agree with me that this is a topic which is clearly a research gap and a blind spot in the literature. However, we nevertheless would advise you against tackling this research gap because frankly, no one cares. It's just not a real research problem. But you might ask yourself, what makes a good research problem for a bachelor or master thesis? A simple example is the climate crisis. It's literally a hot topic with many different solutions and answers on how to best tackle it. Placing your thesis into this debate, as visualized on the right side here, not only gives you a current research problem and plenty of literature that you can cite, but also always allows you to derive many research questions depending on what specific aspect you want to further explore and focus on. In simple terms, we therefore recommend the opposite of what you might think. Focus on a topic that is currently being widely published about rather than a gap in the literature where little or nothing has been written about. So for the moment, remember this. Don't search for a research gap, but rather search for a research problem. There are endless topics that haven't been written about, and hence there exist endless research gaps. But as the example with the birds on the roof of the University of St. Gallen shows, finding a research gap often doesn't lead to a fruitful outcome. If no one has a genuine interest in filling a research gap, it's best to avoid it.